partners and Ryan. So for anybody on the call who isn't aware, I'm Dan Woodhead. I work for StepChange Debt Charity. Hopefully most of you, if not everybody on the call, is aware of who StepChange are and what we do. We are a debt advice charity. So we've been going since 1993, and we provide debt advice to people all over the UK, over the telephone or online through our service. So we give free independent advice, and we work with over 900 different organisations. And I suppose that's a really crucial thing that I want to kind of stress today. I suppose traditionally we have worked with organisations who have been kind of credit lenders, and they have customers or individuals who are struggling to repay the debts that they have. And as part of that, I suppose there has been legislation in place from people like the FCA, etc., who have stipulated that individuals would need to signpost, or companies would need to signpost individuals to independent debt advice. And we've been doing that for nearly 30 years. I suppose what has come out of the past 18 months and probably a little bit longer is the work that we're starting to do with employers, and the need for individuals who are potentially struggling to get the relevant information to know where to go to organisations like ourselves, so that we can go through the situation that they're in and give them that free independent advice and advise them what they are able to do. So without that kind of link and the work that we do with those organisations, it simply wouldn't be possible to speak to the clients that we do. So last year, we had over 4 million people go onto our website, and we actually went through debt advice with over 200,000 individuals. So we, simply without those links being in place and those kind of points of access, it's quite likely that a large number of those clients that we've actually helped wouldn't know what service we offer or how to access that. And that I suppose is a real kind of key takeaway for me. So in terms of the problem statement, I'm sure it's, those of you on the call today are, quite clearly aware that there is an overall problem, and that 1 in 4 people with a debt problem has a mental health problem. We've seen there the kind of headline at the top is that 1 in 4 workers has lost sleep over money worries. And 90% of employers agreed that financial concerns have an impact on their workplace performance. So it is a massive subject and a massive issue for staff. There's all the related things that we're aware that go on with that, in terms of individuals who may have time off or may not be able to kind of focus on the work in the way that they would hope to do. And poor financial well-being can cost employers the equivalent of up to 17% of their salary costs. So it can really be a massive impact on what employers are able to do, and certainly what their employees are able to perform to. I suppose this stat at the bottom is something that came up to me this week, and it has recently been announced. But this was a massive thing that, from a pandemic point of view, really kind of caught my eye, in terms of 1 in 3 of private renters could last them less than a month on their savings. And that's something that really shows that there is, a huge percentage of the population, certainly from what we see a massive proportion of renters who come to us rather than homeowners. But even still, for mortgages and those who even own outright, there's still an impact of those people who wouldn't be able to cope should their income be cut straight away. And that's something that we see, and we've campaigned for quite a long time about as a charity, in terms of, if people have that kind of income pulled from under their feet, what they're able to then do next, and how much resilience they have. And we can see there that 35% would last less than a month. And that's always worth thinking about in terms of the current climate, with how households have been made up. I know personally from the pandemic, in terms of what your income has looked like and where your expenditure has gone, has been impacted massively. So for some people, in terms of working at home, they may have been better off, and they've had more disposable income because they haven't had the travel cost, they haven't had the expenditure that they would have had with things like holidays, socialising, etc., for that period where we were fully locked down. But I suppose one of the key things that come out is the actual impact on the household, in terms of if one person's working, that's all well and good, but if their partner was involved in hospitality or whatever sector it is, if that kind of income has been pulled from under their feet, that could have a massive impact. And it might be that they were kind of on the edge of being able to break even there. So in terms of the causes of problem debt, this is hopefully where we can introduce a pollness. So what I would hopefully be able to see is there's going to be a list of reasons here, and these are actual reasons from the clients that we debt advised last year in terms of what caused them to be in financial difficulty. So hopefully, if you can click what you think are the top two reasons, and then we'll kind of just run through what that looked like for StepChange clients.
So I'll give it a couple of minutes. I'm seeing quite a few coming through on unemployment, redundancy, and reduced income benefits. COVID-19. Oh, overcommitted on credit is the highest.
Yeah, so I can see 92% have participated. I don't know if I'm counted as one of the people who hasn't, maybe, so that might be why that's reading as it is. I suppose some interesting thoughts there in terms of 54% on overcommitted on credit, and we have 30% for poor budgeting, overspending, and then we've got some high figures as well for unemployment or redundancy and reduced income or benefits. What we've actually seen from the stats that our clients have shared with us is the biggest reason quoted last year was unemployment or redundancy. But I suppose the big theme that we actually had was unemployment or redundancy, reduction in income, injury or health issue, COVID-19, and separation or divorce were 5 out of the 6 in terms of the biggest reasons people start to struggle with their finances. And when you look at that, that's nearly 65% of the clients that we actually spoke to last year had a reduction in their income from one reason or another, be that unemployment, that their benefits were stopped, that somebody had COVID, or they had an injury, whatever it might be. And that's what we typically see from our clients, that everything's okay and they're ticking along, and all of a sudden their income drops from one level to another, and that's the reason that they're not able to cope with their bills. So you can see there the kind of breakdown of the top 6 results that we actually see. And I suppose there was a couple in there that were kind of quoted in terms of overcommitted on credit and kind of didn't budget correctly or kind of bought things that they might not have done. That will always be a reason, and that will cause certain individuals to fall into problem debt. But I suppose that is a little bit of a misconception in terms of what we see. And it isn't that people have typically kind of got too much on credit or have done X, Y, and Z that they shouldn't have done, so to speak. And it's more to the fact that people's incomes have been kind of stripped from under them, and they don't have that facility to kind of cope in terms of what we mentioned before, in terms of savings, etc., to fall back on when times are hard. So that's something always that's good to bear in mind. And as I've kind of mentioned earlier, typically from a workplace point of view, it might not be that individual who's okay and is at work, but part of their family or part of their wider household. If there's been an impact there, that can have a massive effect on them. In terms of money and mental health, I kind of touched on that before in terms of 1 in 4 people with a debt problem also has a mental health problem. What I think is brilliant, which it's in everyday walk of life now in terms of how people are with the mental health. So if you went back 5 or 10 years, that was quite a taboo subject, and I know it's not kind of fully there that everybody's able to come out and speak about that, but that's made massive strides over the past decade or so in terms of how people are able to talk about that, to be diagnosed with that, and to have an understanding of that. And it's almost getting to the point where that's becoming kind of part of normality, and people are comfortable to speak about that in lots of cases. That's still not the case for people's financial situation, and that is still massively a taboo subject, particularly in the workplace as well. And so I suppose part of what I'm hoping to kind of show you today is about who StepChange are and how people can access that. And even if that people can are aware of the website of where we are and what they can go and look at, that is a massive kind of part of what we do. As I mentioned, 4 million people did that last year. There was lots of information about things like the pandemic and why people aren't sure, but we know that people are more than happy to go online and actually seek advice via our online tool rather than actually speaking to us. And that's what we're seeing is the most popular way for clients to access our service. So it really is kind of just presenting those individuals with what they can actually access. And again, just looking at the percentage of clients that we had last year and what backgrounds that they were from, 52% of our clients were actually in employment of some description. And that to me kind of shows a huge part of the problem, that it's not just those people who are out of work who are struggling. Those people who are in work are also at risk of being in problem debt and not able to cope. So I think just because somebody is employed doesn't necessarily mean that they're able to cope with the bills that they have, etc. Again, that can go down to their household or the changing circumstances and what's happening there. And for me, the big opportunity there is to engage with those people just to make them aware of the service that is available. The big stat on the left there, 50% of people actually wait 12 months before coming through to StepChange to get help. We know in that time frame that individuals' debts can actually increase by nearly £2,500 because of extra charges and sell-on bits and default notices, etc. So we know if we can speak to somebody sooner, there are a lot more options that we can offer to an individual than if they come to us 12 months down the line when things have deteriorated and debts have increased or been passed on to different areas, etc. So it really is a massive kind of opportunity that if you're speaking to a member of staff or you're aware of an issue that's going on, or even if it's a part that you commit to in terms of your well-being offering or your well-being structure in terms of the message you deliver, if there's something that you can put into that about who StepChange are or where they can access debt advice, that's a real opportunity for that person to kind of put their head above the parapet. And it might not be that they jump up in that meeting and say, yes, I have a problem, but if they then know what the opportunities are or where they can go to get advice, that's the opportunity that they may need. And yeah, that's it from me. I don't know if you want to do questions now, Nuz, or if that's after Tracy's spoken.
We can take a couple of questions before we dive into Tracy presenting. Thank you so much for that, Dan. I think I made a couple of points there. First of all, I'm not sure whether anyone else was aware around the action taken by the FCA. So this problem is quite huge. It's now become where, employers are expected to signpost. The interesting thing, I think, is to just look at what StepChange has in terms of that free, expert and confidential support. I guess the question that I guess on the minds of many employers is where really to start if it looks at StepChange. Is it just getting in touch through yourself and that's how they can take the first step?
Yeah, so the email address below, the partnerships at stepchange.org is the best email to get in touch with, and that will go to a couple of my colleagues, and then it might be me or it might be somebody else within the organisation that we can reach out, and then we can run through a little bit about what we've kind of gone through today and what we can possibly help within that space. So yeah, if you want to circulate that address or these slides, I'm happy with that, but partnerships at stepchange.org is the best way if anybody wants to reach out.
Justine just asked a question that just popped up there. Are you seeing an increase in people getting into problem debt with buy now, pay later schemes?
It's a very hot topic, to be fair. So we have seen a increase in buy now, pay later. I suppose it's come from it hasn't had a base like a credit card or a loan, for example. So we're always seeing an increase in the number of buy now, pay later. I think there's been a number of different kind of media releases that we've done on the issues with buy now, pay later. I wouldn't say it's got to the scale of things like payday, but we are seeing it as a growing issue. So it's difficult to kind of say how big it is because it's come from nothing. So we're seeing that the client base with buy now, pay later debts is starting to grow, but it's not as big as what other problems have been with, for example, payday.
I think it's also just to note as well the knock-on effect. If you've got 1 in 6 that have a mortgage that, you know, have less than a month in their savings, you know, and you look at what the population is, you know, that's over 1 million people in the UK that potentially, you know, it could impact. And then the knock-on effects in terms of productivity levels, etc. It can be really, quite an impactful figure.
Yeah, there's possibly quite a big issue on the horizon then as well from people with mortgages. I've seen an article today about the potential for interest rates to increase. So there's obviously people who have mortgages who will see that kind of figure go up. We've got things like the gas and electric prices. I've seen an article where that might go up by 30% over the next winter. In terms of the cost that individuals will pay for that. We've got the cost of living in terms of supermarket shopping, which looks to be going up as well. So there's all these kind of squeezes that are happening in everyday life. We've got the fuel at the minute in terms of the price of fuel has rocketed. I mean, I don't know if that's a short-term thing or that will stay where it is. So you've got all these normal household costs that are being squeezed. You've got people with no savings. And we know before the pandemic, there was a huge number of people who were kind of on a knife edge and were, you know, managing to make ends meet, but they didn't have much left after that. And if that keeps getting squeezed, there's certainly going to be a bigger problem that's coming down the pipeline, unfortunately.
So I guess, Richard, in to some degree, it's being answered in that question of, you know, are we seeing the amount of debt and borrowing going up, people getting into more difficulties following COVID impact, is what Richard was asking around.
So at StepChange, we are seeing an increase in the level of debt. So it's nearly at 13,000 for the average level of unsecured debt, and we've seen that grow over the past 12 months. So each year we produce our kind of stats yearbook that looks at the number of clients that we've helped and where they're from and what their levels of debt are. And yeah, we are seeing an increase in that. So the next range of figures will be out soon for our half yearly yearbook. So there should be something out which kind of says how the first half of 2021's gone, but I would anticipate that was increasing previously.
Yeah. I think Luke made a good point of how do you think we can drive home the importance of 3 to 6 month emergency funds? This is widely accepted within the finance industry as best practice, but isn't widely adopted. I think to that point, Luke, I have to say that's the purpose of what we're trying to do with StepChange and organizations like that, to really drive through that messaging of, you know, to have only 1 month saving in terms of emergency funds is not going to help you when you actually get into that situation. So I think really point there is how do we continue raising the conversation around financial well-being and education in organizations that have the influence in terms of many access to many employees. So yeah, definitely, I think how do we keep on raising that in conversations? And I think StepChange tend to take that in a lot of their conversations, and you'll hear it through coming over the next through. I'll take this last one from Justine. Are you anticipating an increase in people getting into debt when universal credit reduces?
Yes. I think all the forecasts suggest that there are a huge number of individuals who have been used to the £20 uplift. And obviously once that goes, let's say a big percentage out of their pocket each week and then each month. So we're anticipating that will have an impact. It will kind of reduce the amount that individuals have. What we're seeing at StepChange is a growing sector in terms of the number of people who actually come to us for help who actually have a deficit. So their outgoings, if you look at just their rent, their council tax, the gas, electric, their water, and other kind of essential bills are higher than what their wages, and that's before you've even looked at their food, any clothing, any prescription costs, etc. And that isn't a StepChange problem. That's a societal and a sector-wide problem, that there are individuals who have less than nothing, and I suppose the cut to UC just makes that worse in some respects to that segment of society, unfortunately.